How we doing, everyone? In Golden State BJJ. This is Coach Zach with Professor Mike. We're going to go over some of the fundamental techniques that we were going through over the past 2 weeks on the stand-up, body lock, and making sure that we can prevent ourselves from being lifted up, especially when we're trying to grab a carton of milk or maybe those eggs that you need to get at the store. All right, so we're going to start with Professor Mike on my back. Remember, he has the body lock. I need to find the hand that's on top in order for me to break this grip. But usually if someone's behind you, they're going to be trying to lift you up. So as Professor Mike tries to lift me up, I make sure I hook the leg. As I hook this leg, I base out with my foot in front, so I have a good base, and I'm leaning back into him. I can use him as my pull, basically, to lean against. Now, I make sure that I take my two hands, I reach into the top of the hand, and thumb goes in, wrist deep. I make sure my right foot plants on the mat, so I have a good base. I'm going to make sure that I twist to my hip, his hands to go to my hip bone. As I go to the hip bone, I need to make sure that I bring my hip and his hands at the same time. It's not going to work if I'm just trying to bring his hand. My two hands aren't going to be stronger than his whole body. So I make sure I bring my hip and his hands to my hip bone. I make sure I push down on his hand, on this top hand. As my hip pops out, I need to create tension to break the grip. As I make sure I push down and I pop my hip out, I create tension and break his grip. As I break his grip, I hold his hand. I don't let go. If I let go, he just re-grips. I make sure I hold the hand and I turn to face the hand that I'm holding. So not this way. I make sure I turn this way so I can guide him out of my direction. And once again, Professor Mike grabs me from behind. He tries to lift me up. I hook the leg. I base out. I make sure I have a good base. My thumbs go into the wrist. I cup his hand and I cup his wrist. I make sure I bring my hip and his hand to my hip bone. As I bring that down, I make sure I push down on his hands and I pop my hip out. Not like this and try to pop, his hands are too strong. I gotta make sure I create tension on this grip right here. So as I do so, I push down, pop the hip, see how my hip comes out. Okay? I make sure I hold the hand and I make sure I guide his hand and his body away from me. So I turn towards the hand, guide his hand away, end up safe, go to the checkout, get your milk.